much better, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm Hans Strapp. I'd like to ask you what brings you here and how I might be of help to you.
I just went through a divorce that I did not want. My wife divorced me, and I felt that we should continue on as going through therapy. And I'm having a very difficult time getting over the loss of my wife, the loss of our family, and also selling of the home. I'm quite devastated by it all.
Can you fill me in a little bit about how this divorce came about?
We were married about 5 years ago, and we were happy for the first 2 years. And then we just started drifting apart through, as I look back at it now, it was through lack of communications. I feel was the most part of it. We would sit there at the dinner table and just make small talk and talk about immaterial things. And we just drifted further and further apart. And we both held the anger inside of us. We were angry at each other. We did not communicate at all. And we just drifted further and further apart. And then at that point in time, after we were married for about 3 years, we did seek out some counseling.
Mm-hmm. Did that accomplish anything? Well, what did it accomplish?
The counseling at that time helped us look at each other. We looked at ourselves, not at each other. We looked at ourselves. And I believe that both my wife and I are better people for going to this counseling. But
this was individual therapy?
Yes, it was individual therapy. We did not go together.
Did you see the same therapist?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we continued to go individually. And then my wife came to me one day and she said that she thought it would be a good idea if we separated for like 6 months or a year, and I would stay in the house and keep the house. And I agreed to that. I thought it was a good idea because we were just drifting further and further apart. And she moved out, took an apartment, and about 4 months later, we continued to go to therapy, and about 4 months later, she came back to me and said that she would never be coming home again, and that she wanted me to sell the house, and that she felt it was completely over between us.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite devastated by this because I did not want this divorce. And I put the house up for sale. It's sold within 2 weeks, and we closed escrow within 6 weeks. And I took an apartment, and hoping that, because the house was quite a financial burden on us. It took 2 incomes to keep it going. And I moved into an apartment, and then I would call my wife up and see if she wanted to date, or we could continue on the therapy, but I wanted to save the marriage. And then after I'd been in my apartment for about 30 days, she called me up and said that she'd filed for divorce.
What reason did she give for moving out?
We just weren't getting on. We just weren't getting along. That was all. There were no.
What precisely happened, or in what way did you not get along?
We didn't communicate.
Yeah, you said that at the beginning. That was a problem from the beginning.
Yes, and it still is to this day. Right now, it's still to this day. We just did not communicate. We would be sitting at the dinner table, and I would ask, my wife would be sitting there, and I could see she was angry. She was sulking. I would say, "What's the matter?" And she would say, "Nothing." Well, me being a nitwit at that time at myself, I would say, "Oh, okay, nothing's fine," so I would just drop it. I wouldn't pursue it. And then we would go to bed and get up the next morning and repeat the whole scene all over again. And we just absolutely did not communicate, and we just kept drifting further and further apart. We never discussed our problems whatsoever. Our lovemaking started to fall off, and it was just lack of communication is all it was. We just, even possibly she would have filed for divorce anyway if we would have communicated. But I feel so empty inside because we never really expressed ourselves to each other.
When you say that she would sit at the breakfast table and sulk, something must have happened the night before or the day before or the moment before. There must have been some things that you did that she reacted to, or some things that were going on between the two of you that the other reacted in very adverse ways. What comes to mind about that?
Okay, I believe part of it was that my wife did not think I was well educated enough for, at that time, for the social people that we were running around with at that time. I don't think she thought I was well educated enough. I am not a college graduate.
She was?
No, she is not, but she has high ideas for herself. And I think that she felt that these groups that we were socializing with at the time, a lot of times I felt that she was very embarrassed. She tried to protect me because I just wasn't an outgoing, vibrant pillar of the community type. I also think another thing that bothered her was that she made more money than I did. And I think that bothered her considerably.
Did it bother you?
Somewhat. It was not overpowering to me because I felt that our love was hold us together. It was not a big material thing to me at that time.
Yeah, I meant to ask you that. When you first met her, when you were first married, I assume that happened fairly soon thereafter, or?
We went together about 2 years.
I see. There was a time when you were getting along pretty well, and these problems in communication, as you described them, did not occur, or they were?
Yes. When we first met, we had I guess a simple male-female relationship. We were infatuated with each other. I thought she was the most wonderful person in the world. She was attracted to me because I was physically good-looking, and at that point in my life, I did have I was comfortable financially, and we did seem to have a lot of things in common when we did get married.
Mm-hmm. So there was a good understanding, and the relationship was harmonious?
Yes, initially, yes.
Mm-hmm.
My wedding day was the happiest day of my life.
Mm-hmm. You had been married before?
No, this was my first marriage.
Had she been married before?
Yes.
I see. And there were some children?
My wife has 4 children.
She has 4 children. Well, getting back to the difficulties that eventually led to the divorce, I would like to pursue a little more the ideas that you were presenting about her feeling that you somehow didn't measure up to her expectations. How did you feel about that?
It made me feel very inadequate. When we would go out we used to go to a lot of black tie affairs, and she would constantly cut in on my conversations, whether she was correcting me or she had something to contribute. It didn't make any difference. She would cut in. Mm-hmm. I can remember one time when we went to a nice affair, and there were about 4 couples sitting at the table, and the lady sitting next to me expressed a political opinion, and I disagreed with it. So I expressed my political opinion, and then after, which I made sure everyone at the table heard me, and after it was all over, my wife announced to the table that I always played the devil's advocate, which I wanted to punch her right in the mouth for saying that.
Mm-hmm. So you felt she was putting you down, and you were angry?
Yes.
So how did that result in her sulking in the morning and saying, when you questioned what's going on, she would say nothing?
As I reflect back on it now, I'm sure that she was angry with me because I didn't present the perfect image at the dinner table the previous night, so it carried over into the morning, and rather than us sitting down and discussing it, mm-hmm. and saying, what the heck is going on here, she wouldn't say anything, and I would just, well, okay, I'll let it go. I wouldn't say anything, and then we would just...
And you would get angry, and she would be angry.
Yes, and we just didn't say anything about it. We were just both hoping, I guess, that it would just go away by itself.
It didn't?
No.
What happened instead?
We drifted further and further and further apart. The touching, the kissing, the holding, the caressing, the intimate looks, they weren't there anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's when finally it got to the point, I could see there was a problem, but never going to therapy before, never reading any self-improvement books, always just being basically interested in material things. I really didn't know how to handle it. I just didn't know what to do.
Did you discuss these problems, this estrangement that was occurring between the two of you? I didn't get the impression, at least until the time that you went to see a counselor. Did you discuss these things at all?
If there was any discussion at all, it was very, very limited. She wrote me 2 or 3, this is while we're still married, living together.
Yes.
She wrote me 2 or 3 letters from time to time, and would express her feelings, partially express her feelings. But I would read the letters, and then we would discuss them superficially. But there was never...
What did she say in those letters?
She would be angry. She was angry at herself for what she did.
You mean to criticize you? Or?
Yes. She would be angry at herself for what she did, and she would feel bad. And so I took it as an apology, and I would go to her and I'd say, gee, that's fine. I'm glad you wrote the letter. And we would talk about the letters superficially, but we never got to the real meat of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Whose idea was it to seek professional help?
My wife's.
And you went along? She felt that that would be helpful to improve the marital relationship?
Yes, she went, when she first started going to the counselors, I think she went like 3 or 4 months, and she told me, I didn't even get the impact of the whole thing. You know, I almost had my head buried in the sand almost. She told me she's going to a counselor. Oh, okay, fine, great. Good, you need it. So after she went to the counselor for like 3 or 4 months, and then she says, I want you to start going too. And I could see our relationship was just absolutely deteriorating. And so I said, fine, I'll go. I always referred to it as one flew over the cuckoo's nest, because I was not crazy about therapy whatsoever at that point in my life. And I started going, and I could see the benefits that I was receiving from this. And I felt that if my wife was receiving as many benefits as I was, we were going to pull this marriage back together again.
Mm-hmm. Were you aware of any things that you might have been doing to aggravate the situation or create in part the problems that arose? That is, were you doing, might you, obviously, you know, you couldn't do much about the income, you couldn't do much about the education. Somehow or other she was disappointed in you, but might there have been something? You said you kind of rejected the idea of seeking help. Might there have been other things that somehow made it worse?
She complained to me several times that I was not attentive enough to her. I did not caress her. I did not hold her enough. We did not make love enough times. She wanted more physical attractions.
Mm-hmm. You said earlier you were rather strongly in love with her. There was a strong attraction there. That had worn off, or you
initially,
lost?
Yes. Initially, when we dated, and then say like the first 2 years of the marriage, and then we started drifting apart after that.
Mm-hmm. So you felt basically that she was somehow disappointed in you, or dissatisfied, or displeased, or in were you asking yourself questions as to what you might have been contributing to this, or were continuing to contribute to this?
At that time, when I first started noticing negative thoughts, my own negative thoughts towards my wife, I was telling myself that it was her fault.
Yes.
It's not me, it's her. And when...
the negative thoughts were what?
She's just a bitch.
Uh-huh.
She's screwed up.
You were getting very angry at her.
Yes. And I was... When she would criticize me, rather than calling it on her and saying, well, hey, you know, that's your opinion, if you want to express your opinion, fine, but that's not the way I see it. Rather than discussing it and expressing your opinions, my attitude was, well, I'm going to get even with her. I'm going to get back at her. She criticized me at the dinner table one night. Well, I'm going to get her. The next Saturday night, I'm going to get her. I'm going to put her in her place.
Have you had similar kinds of relationships in which you were angry, or your partner was somehow dissatisfied, or was this the first time this ever happened in your life?
Up until I was married to my ex-wife, women were just more or less sex objects to me. I was never really interested in getting married. They were just dates, somebody for Saturday night. I would go with a girl for 2, 3, 4 years until they started hammering me about getting married, and I wanted no part of it until I met.
Closeness, intimacy, other than physical, was not much of an issue.
No.
You weren't looking for it, and it didn't seem to be important to you. Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, no, not at all. I knew there was something missing. Say I dated for like 20 years or whatever it was. I knew there was something missing. But I just never could reach down inside of myself and come to say, hey, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
It was very difficult for me.
So this was really the first time that while you were married, you lived close range with a woman, and that brought about these problems that have to do, it seems to me, with difficulties in intimate relationships, and where you felt somehow put down, or in certain ways your partner was disappointed in you, or there was a lot of angry interchange. I mean, there clearly was something basically wrong in the relationship that needed, I think, to be worked out.
Yes.
And I think it's also not unimportant that you had a number of sort of fleeting, shall we say, relationships, or impermanent relationships. You were how old when you got married?
42.
Uh-huh. And had you ever been wondering why you hadn't married sooner, or did this just not...
Well, for one thing, I was looking for the perfect woman.
I see.
She had to have the perfect personality and the perfect body. And...
they're hard to find.
Yes, I'm going to start looking again, though, but I'm not going to take 25 years to find one. I finally come to realize that I put my expectations way too high. I had to look at myself and see what do I have to offer. When Connie and I got married, I thought she was the most perfect woman in the entire world.
But apparently she had certain expectations of you, too, that you didn't meet.
Yes.
So it may have been a situation where both of you had very high expectations of the other, and you couldn't fulfill them because both of you were looking for perhaps the kind of people that don't exist,
yes,
or the kind of relationship that doesn't exist, and you were sort of brought down hard to reality, finding out that you had shortcomings, that she had shortcomings, and you somehow weren't able to come to terms with those?
Several months ago, I alluded this to the counselor. When I went in to see him one day, I said, you know, I feel sorry for Connie. I mean, I was filled with anger and hatred at this time. I mean, I was really mad at her. But I could still bring to myself, as you know, I feel sorry for Connie because I think she's possibly looking for the man that does not exist. The man that's perfect. And I just don't think she'll ever
But by
find
the
it.
same token, you're also looking for the woman that perhaps doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, you know, the next Saturday night, you never know what happens. Anyway.
You're not quite convinced that that's impossible, that maybe you need to examine some things there about, well, whether the kind of partner you're looking for can be found. Interestingly, too, that at first, your wife was that ideal person, but then things went downhill, and apparently they went downhill also as far as she was concerned. She felt dissatisfied, and
Yes.
you weren't meeting her needs, and she felt, you know, the other way around too. That is, you weren't meeting each other's needs. Well, I've been asking you a lot of questions. Are there any questions you want to ask me?
How are the Commodores going to do in football next year? I wasn't ready for that. I have a lot of questions to ask you. Where do I go at this point in my life? How do I get started? I want to get started. How do I get started again? I'm depressed from the divorce. I don't have a woman in my life. I feel that my job is beneath me as what I'm doing right now. I should have a better job. I live in a crummy little apartment, which I hate. I want a house. I want all the things that I had before. And where do I get started? How do I get doing this?
You lost some of your, you lost a job, and you lost...
I've had 3 or 4 jobs last year. And we sold the house. You know, I'm starting all over again.
What do you attribute these, how did this come about? The job loss,
one of them I was laid off. I knew it was coming, and I got laid off on that one. One of them I only had it for 2 months, and I got fired.
Did you get angry on the job, or you get into conflicts with people on the job? Well,
that was a matter of opinion. I put my fist through the wall one time, but I thought I was just showing my expression. They took it as being angry. The woman that I worked with, I was in real estate at the time, and there was we were in new home sales, and there were 2 of us in the sales office. And this woman and I, she was quite vocal, just a loudmouth. She was a bitch, as a matter of fact. That's all she was. And we worked together for a while. And
you used that term to describe your wife, too.
Yes. Well, I could just about use it to describe all women right now, as far as I'm concerned. We got along okay for a while. I did put my fist through the wall one day in the sales office, but it was an accident.
Are you pretty explosive in your dealings with people in general?
I was at that time. I was very depressed, very angry, and very upset. And to work with this particular woman, who to this day I still don't like her. She's not a good person. And so she finally went to the sales manager, and this is the thing that really irritates me. She never discussed with me our problem. She never came to me once. I went to her 2 or 3 times, which I was proud of myself at the time, because I never could do this with my wife. I went to her 2 or 3 times, and I could see there's a problem. I said, you know, there's a real problem here. Let's talk it out. And she was really rude with me. She wouldn't talk about it. She was uncommunicative. And then I said to myself, well, that's your problem, man. You're screwed up. And so anyway, we started, this gal that I was working with, we started drifting further and further apart. And then she went to the salesman, without ever discussing anything with me. She went to the sales manager and told him that I'd put my fist to the wall and I was an SOB to work with and so forth and so on. And he called me in and fired me. And I was very unhappy about that. That was one of the jobs I had.
Well, I certainly understand you've had a lot of disappointments in your recent life in particular. And earlier on too, or has this...
Yes.
You nod your head?
Yes, I believe my problem started from my childhood.
Well, I think that would be valuable to go into also, because, you know, this didn't start yesterday.
No.
And it didn't start the day before, and it's not likely to, you know, terminate tomorrow. I think it would be very helpful to you to find a therapist to work with and examine what the things are that you might be contributing to or that lead to the kinds of difficulties that you have found yourself in. And I think that this is a good time. I think that the fact that you're are at a point that you are uncomfortable, that you are feeling kind of crummy about yourself and the world, would be a good time to take up this unfinished business and look at the totality of your life. It may take some time to do that, and I think that it can be done, and there's help available. And I realize that, you know, financial considerations play a part, but I certainly would encourage you to find a competent therapist and stick with it. I have a sense you probably would.
Yes, now that I've finally been introduced to therapy, I am very high on it, and I am irritated at myself that I never received some type of counseling or therapy when I was a young person in my 20s, when I really needed it the most at that point in time, rather than all my education or night school or whatever I've done in my life. I've always leaned towards how can I make more money. I read business magazines, and when I went to night school, it was strictly related to business and increase my income. Half of that time should have been devoted to self-improvement and therapy.
Our time, unfortunately, is running short, but I'm curious, is there any one thing, you said it started from day one, is there any one thing in your childhood or growing up that you attribute your major difficulties to, and anything in particular that come to mind?
The lack of affection and love as a child, and also that, and being alone, and being an only child.
Lack of affection from
my mother and father.
Both parents?
Yes. Lack of affection, and then when I received no love and affection, and being an only child, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I spent an awful lot of time by myself as a child because they were alcoholics, and I spent
Both parents were alcoholics?
Yes. I spent an awful lot of time by myself. I had a dog and a teddy bear, and that was it. And
do you have any friends?
Even as a youngster, I had a difficult time making friends. Because at that time, even as a child, I think I had a lot of anger in me, and very few friends. But at that, I learned. I didn't learn. I got off on the wrong foot in life by not communicating as a child, and it just carried over as the years went by.
I think you have certainly some pretty good understanding of some of the history. And is this something that was occurring in therapy, or that you arrived at in therapy?
Yes, just about everything that I know of therapy is what I've learned in the last year.
Well, okay. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I enjoyed talking to you. Wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
A sense of the kinds of problems that you have that bring you here. Maybe tell me a bit about yourself and so forth.
Right now, I'm very depressed over the divorce that I just went through. I'm very angry at my wife. I did not want the divorce at all. I wanted to see if we could work out our problems.
You hadn't been married prior to this?
No, this was my first marriage at 42.
And how long did you remain married?
We were married 4 years.
And could you tell me about the circumstances that sort of led to the divorce?
I think both myself and my wife were terrible communicators. We didn't communicate our feelings.
You say that you were poor communicators and that you really weren't able to share your feelings?
Yes.
Is that with your wife, or does that occur now in other situations as well?
It still occurs somewhat. I have been going to some counseling this past year, and the counselor has been working with me with my anger and helping me express myself and express my feelings. And I am much better at expressing my feelings now than I was when I was married.
How do you feel about sharing your feelings right now here in these sort of circumstances?
I think it's great. I felt that I've been sheltered, or I've sheltered myself. I haven't communicated with society. I've been practically a loner all my life, and I've never had a lot of friends, and I've never done any therapy at all, done any self-improvement books, and I really feel I've missed out on life. And I think this is fine. I don't care where this film goes. I think it's great to express myself now.
What I am kind of curious about what would lead you, motivate you to sort of participate in this project?
It was an opportunity to show the world that, hey, this is not a bad guy. He's all right, because I've made a lot of enemies in my lifetime. I've been sarcastic, rude, cutting, and I've really been an angry person. And I feel like this is almost like an opportunity to apologize to the people that I've stepped on down through my life.
What I'd like to do is sort of get a sense of these behaviors. You said you were angry, sarcastic, and so forth, and now making the film would provide you with an opportunity to say, no, I'm not such a bad guy.
Yes.
Are there other things that you might be able to do in your day-to-day experience to convey that same feeling without having to make a film? I mean, are there other things that you might try?
Yes. Years ago, when I used to walk into a shop, a print shop, in my profession, and my attitude was that if you want to be my friend, you've got to come to me. If you want, you got to come to me and talk to me and say hello to me. That used to be my attitude, and I would notice that that not too many people would come to me and say hello, how you doing, what's going on today, let's go out for a beer after work. And now, today, after going through therapy, when I walk into the shop now where I'm working, I go up to people and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I open myself up to people.
So that's a change that you've made.
Yes, I'll open myself up to you and say, I'll be the one to say good morning, rather than waiting for the other guy to say good morning to me.
And how does that make you feel now?
It makes me feel much better inside. I feel so much better as we sit here and talk. I feel free about talking about these items. They don't bother me. In the past, I would have sat here like this with my arms folded and kind of glared at you, and I wouldn't have been responsive to your questioning whatsoever.
These feelings about sort of being more open, feeling that you're getting a handle on things, I guess is how you're describing it. Where else, what are the things that you feel you still have to work on?
I still have a lot of depression over the divorce, and I have a lot of anger towards my wife. And I think the anger and the depression are the biggest things that I must work on right now. I feel that I really don't even know why we were divorced. All I received in the mail from the attorney was irreconcilable differences. And I called my wife up and said, what the heck are irreconcilable differences? And she wouldn't discuss it with me. She just said, we're not compatible, and that was the end of the conversation. I think now I want to continue in therapy with my wife and I being there with the therapist and find out exactly what happened in our marriage and eliminate those anger feelings.
I'm a little bit confused by a couple of things you said, okay? And maybe you can help clarify that for me. On the one hand, you say that you're not sure what led to the divorce. I mean, there the paper arrived.
Yes.
But yet, a little while ago, you mentioned something about other factors that might have contributed to the divorce. I guess, as you put it, there were not communicating, not sure. And I guess I'm kind of wondering how you see those two going together.
I'm speculating. I have some ideas, what I think, which caused my wife to file for divorce. I'm not real sure. I want to hear it in her own words. I think I know why, but I want to hear it in her own words. I want us to get together and talk it out.
And what's her attitude towards that whole?
We've been talking about it for a couple of months, and we've kind of been playing cat and mouse with it. Well, you call me. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, I don't know. You know, what's going on here? And I think probably I think we've come to an understanding now. Within probably within a week or so, 2 weeks, we're going to get together with a counselor and see if we can't resolve the hurt.
What do you hope to achieve there? You're talking about resolving the hurt, and
I want to hear in her own words why she divorced me, and I want to express my anger to her over what's happened over the last 4 years.
At that session?
Yes.
Tell me about what does it mean to express your anger? What would that look like if
I've got it inside of me right now. It's bottled up.
Tell me, let's look at that bottled up feeling.
I want to hit. I want to punch. I want to swing. I'm
hurt.
I want to hurt. I want to, when somebody cuts in front of me on the freeway, I want to run over them. If they cut in front of me, I want to hit them with my car because they got in my lane. And I feel that I want to get it out of me.
And get it out of you? How will?
I want to express my anger at my wife. I want to yell at her. I want to scream at her.
And how will that yelling, that screaming, help?
The first thing that came into my mind was a blown-up balloon. Okay. You blow a balloon up, it's about ready to pop. One more puff, and it's going to blow up. And all of a sudden, somebody lets all the air out. That's
and I
feel that. And as we sit here and talk, I'm just thinking about it. I'm getting angrier and angrier.
One kind of concern that I would have in working with you, Richard, is to find out what are the different ways that are available to handle those feelings of being depressed and angry. Clearly, letting it out, letting that balloon go is one way. What I'd like to explore with you is what is the impact of letting it out on that, on others? And what else, are there other ways to handle the anger? What triggers the anger? How long has this been going on? There are a number of questions that I think our examining together would be helpful to look at the anger, the depression, and what you could do about it, what you have been doing about it. Let's start with, if in fact after some reluctance, you were able to get your wife and you to come together with the counselor, and you let the balloon go, as you describe it, what kind of impact would that have on your wife, on your relationships?
From the little communications that I've had with my wife since divorce, she feels like a rat. I mean, she feels like she let me down. She married me and she divorced me. And she feels that she is not, she feels like she's a bad person because she took the family, basically, she took the family away from me, the house that I loved. She did all this stuff. She feels bad about that. And I feel that communicating with each other, with the counselor, I'm sure that the counselor, or I hope, the counselor would make her feel better. Look, you're not a bad person. You could not live with Richard. Maybe Richard ain't so great after all. You cannot live with him. You've got to put your pieces together and get going again. That's what I think she would get from it. The thought of her, right after she moved out of the house, and then I sold the house. She took a condominium, and I got an apartment. My heart ached so much. My stomach was just twisted in knots, thinking of her sitting in that condominium by herself. I was just all torn apart because I want what's right for her. And then, and so I hope that she would get that, she would eliminate that feelings of feeling like a rat, and she's a good person. And what I want to get out of it is just this anger that I have towards her and this anxiety, so I can get on with my life. Because many days I get so damn mad at her. If I could see her, I would never do it, but I want to punch her right in the mouth. I get so damn angry at her.
On the one hand, I get the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a lot of caring. The feeling that you have right now, the welling of the eyes, the teariness, the concern. But yet, on the other hand, there's a lot of anger.
Yes.
A lot of that she...
I'm asking myself today, should Connie and I really be married? And that was a tough, the first time that question popped into my head, that was hard for me to deal with. Because I didn't want this divorce. I didn't want the family to go. I didn't want anything to go. I wanted our relationship to improve and for us to live happily ever after and be married. I didn't want anything to end, and I thought we could do it, but she felt different, so she moved.
Take a moment. It's okay. There's a lot of feelings.
Yes.
Let's go back to a question that I asked before. If you meet with her and the counselor, and you let the balloon go, if you vent all that anger, all that emotion that's welled up, what would I see? I mean, what form would it take? I mean, could you play through what...
I feel that I would be more at peace with myself.
What would I see? What would happen in the session? Would there be...
I would just let go of the anger that I have inside of me right now. I'm hoping to hell the anxiety would dissipate, and that you would see I wouldn't walk around with that little sarcastic glint in my eye, wanting to punch everybody in the mouth.
The people who cut in front of you on the expressway, the people who don't come over and ask you out.
Yes, and I would be an open and free person, ready to communicate.
Okay. I am trying to understand, and maybe you could help me, if there are any other ways what other ways you've tried to deal with that anger? Are there other ways to express the anger, either to your wife or to other people?
Express the anger.
How else do people handle anger? Besides just letting balloons go, besides smashing cars in.
One outlet is when I run, when I jog, I jog till I almost drop.
But I mean, with someone else, let's say someone else has done something that irritates you. You know, they press you. You know, they don't meet what you think. They don't behave the way you feel they should behave, and you get angry and pissed off. How does one handle that? What do you do in those?
Give them a piece of your mind. You tell the son of a bitch to go to hell.
I mean, come on, Richard. What do you mean? I cut in front of you. Don't honk your horn at me.
Kick your ass, you son of a bitch.
I'd like to see you try it.
I'm getting to wonder how serious you are here.
I guess I'm wondering, Richard, what else is there to do besides kicking one's ass when people don't?
Shut up!
You could yell. That's clearly one thing. Besides kicking ass and yelling, what else could one do?
Show love.
Show love? When you're all pissed off and the guy cut in front of you, you're going to show love? What does that mean, show love?
Reach out.
Yeah. Are there other things one can do besides kick ass, yell, show love?
Understand that the other person is just a human being?
Yeah, like you. And you even talked about it at the beginning. Perhaps there are other ways to express feelings, of letting people know what it is about what they've done that you find so upsetting. You know, Richard, when you do X in situation Y, it makes me feel Z. Are you aware that you did that? I mean, is that a way that you might be able to communicate with your wife? I mean, I guess one of the things that we would do in future sessions would be to understand what it is that triggers your anger. What's common among those different situations? Have you...
I'm having a problem right now where I'm working. The fellow that I run a machine, and the fellow that runs the machine right next to me, we're almost at arm's length, like just like you and I are right all night long. And the guy talks all night long.
Just keeps
He's got
going
diarrhea
on.
of the mouth,
Right.
and he goes on and on and on. And
it just grates on you.
yes, and first I said, what in the hell have I gone to counseling for if I haven't learned how to communicate? And I've got down on myself because I wouldn't say, hey, look, Jim, let me talk to you about this problem. You're talking all night long. First that went through my head, and then I was going to take him outside and punch him out. No, I said, that's no good. That's not right. And then, well, I'll just turn my back on it for a while. Maybe it'll go away. It'll go away by itself. And then I got to the point where I said, well, he's just a human being. The guy he's kind of a screwball. And I'll just take him for what he is. And I won't get, he talks and I listen, then I walk away. So I'm tolerating him a lot better right now. But I'm still disappointed in myself that I have not communicated to him what's bugging me.
Right. So the fuse is still short.
Yes.
And given the right circumstances, it can go like that.
Yes.
And the question is, how do you communicate with someone that what they're doing bugs you, but without turning that person away?
Yes.
I mean, how do you tell your wife, how do you tell this guy that there are things that they do that irritate you, that bother you, but that you don't violate the whole relationship.
This is what I'm afraid. I mean, I don't really care if Jim is a friend of mine or not. I mean, I'm not going to socialize
Right.
with this guy. So I don't really care whether he's my friend or not, but still he's a human being. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to be in one of those situations where we work 3 feet from
Right.
each other and we don't talk all night long. That's
Yep.
disastrous. So I've asked myself many times, how do I communicate to this fella and get my point across, but not alienate him completely?
Okay, I mean, that's a very reasonable request. And I think that in therapy, in subsequent sessions, we would work on exactly those skills. Not only with him, but is there a way to relate to your wife in a similar fashion? Is there a way to relate to other people without turning them off? It seems to me that there are alternatives.
And that's what I want to find out.
And I think therapy can clearly help you not only find out about those things, but also actually work to implement them, to change them. I mean, you have a lot going for yourself. There is one other question, one other observation that you made that I'd like to pursue a little bit, if I may. You said not only do you feel this anger, but you also feel depressed.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you could share with me a bit about that depression.
The depression is the loss of everything that we've mentioned, including my wife and everything. The depression is also that I do not have a female companion right now. I desperately miss the love of a woman, the touch, the way they place things in the house. I miss
So
a
you
woman.
feel lonely.
I'm very lonely, and I'm also almost to the point of panic or anxiety, because I have had I don't know how many dates I've had this year. I lost track of them. But rarely do I call a woman back up again, because I just haven't been able to find anybody that I really felt that fit what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. Looks, personality, position. And I'm starting to get a little panicky about will I ever. Of course, I realize it's been a very short time,
sure.
But I'm starting to get panicky about that.
Yeah. And it sounds like you have a shopping list and then you go around. Is that
a shopping list?
I mean, of the features that people should fit. I mean, you have this list of...
She's got to be good looking to begin with.
Yeah, and...
She's got to turn me on physically.
Okay.
And she's got to be educated.
Mm-hmm. So you have to, not only that, you have to establish some kind of relationship with these people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tell me a bit about the depression. How bad off is it, and when does it occur? And
it's peaks and valleys. I think the worst time is when I'm sitting at home by myself. I had just done the wash. Mm-hmm. I've just cleaned the house, and the football game was just over, and no, this wouldn't be a Saturday. The football game would be over, and my team just lost, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've got my food shopping done, and I don't have a date, and I have absolutely nothing to do, and I don't feel like reading a book. And I sit around, I get very depressed, I get feeling sorry for myself, and am I going to commit suicide, and just get very depressed. I just don't, I don't feel like talking to anybody.
Commit suicide? Tell me a bit about that. How?
That thought has entered into my head, committing suicide.
What are the thoughts do you have when you're sitting there and...
Well, the first thing I get thinking about is what will I write in the note? How will I fill the note out? And who will I address it to? Or will I address it to anybody? Or will I leave a note? Do I even want to leave a note? Screw the world. They're all a bunch of son of a bitches anyway. And I get thinking about that. Then I get thinking about getting my gun.
You have a gun available in the house?
I have two of them. Think about getting my gun. And then I get thinking about the mess that'll leave. I would never commit, so I'm going to do it with a gun, see? And I would never do it in the house because it leaves too much of a mess. So what you've got to do is, I've got a garage in this apartment where I live. So I'm going to go down the garage and I'm going to nail up plywood boards on the wall and on the floor. So, and you see, you have to also, you can't go like this because you might miss. You might get shaking so bad you got to put it in your mouth. You got to put it in your mouth and pull the trigger. Well, when you pull the trigger and all your brains go shoot, so they'll hit the plywood wall.
And avoid a mess.
And avoid a mess, right. So when the people come in to clean up, all they have to do is pull the plywood down.
Very considerate person.
Yes. And, well, wait, I'm not finished yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And also, you put a big blanket on the floor, too, a big, heavy blanket, so it absorbs all the blood. And so when the people come in to clean up, all they do is take the blanket and they throw it together and take it off, and they're gone.
Let me ask you something unusual. What prevents you from doing that?
That the people that I leave behind will think I'm weak. That there are people that care about me. They've told me this. And I don't want to leave this world that way.
I wouldn't want you to leave that way either. I mean, even though you're lonely, it sounds like you're not alone. That people do care. You've been through an awful lot. You've had a situation of a marriage breakup, changing of a job. There may be even other stresses in your life that are all coming together at this time. And I am seeing that some of the reaction that you're having, the depression, the sadness, the feeling of hopelessness and at times even helplessness, may in some sense even be a natural reaction to what you've been through. I mean, that doesn't make it have less of an impact. But on the other hand, I feel a kind of, how should I put it, a real desire to live, a sense of realizing new potential, of wanting to change.
Yes, that's very true.
And it won't be easy, okay?
I feel at my age right now, which I'm 47, I feel almost like I've been reborn again. I'm going to start a new career very soon, and in two years from now, I'll think that the marriage was okay for what. In fact, I was going to write my wife a letter, and I was going to say, "Thank you for coming into my life," and then I was going to fill it all in with about 4 million words of everything that I'm angry about, and then the last sentence would be, "Thank you for leaving my life." And I think this is a very difficult time right now, and I need therapy.
What would you thank her for coming into your life for? I mean, what are the things that she's done that you're really grateful for?
She's a wonderful woman. She has initially, not in the last 2 years, but initially, she taught me love, compassion, some understanding. It was beautiful being with a woman, not have to call somebody up and get a date. She was always available. She was there. She was a good housekeeper. We had a lot of fun together initially, and my wedding day, which even though I have a hard time with that right now, but I can say my wedding day was the happiest day of my entire life. And she taught me an awful lot of things. Okay, that was then. Maybe we weren't supposed to be married. Okay, fine. It's over. But that's why I would thank her for coming into my life.
What did you bring to the relationship? What did she learn from you? What did you have to give?
I don't think I gave her anything.
Nothing? If she was sitting here, what would she say she's learned from you? What did you give?
I don't know.
No.
I don't. I don't think I gave the relationship anything.
What do you have to give to those other women you want to meet now?
Because I have learned love. I have learned that even though my next woman is not perfect, she will be my next woman. And I'll overlook her slight imperfections.
Well, that's really kind of you.
Thanks, sucker. And the anger that I held with Connie for the first few years of our marriage, and that are coming out of me, I really want to touch and hold and feel and caress the things that she cried out for and I didn't give to her.
Ooh. Let me just give you a few kind of summary comments, Richard. First of all, I appreciate your openness and your willingness to sort of share, not only with me, but in this setting. I've learned a fair amount about you during the course of this time. And in future sessions, if we had an opportunity to work together, I would try to explore with you a bit more about the nature of your anger, the kinds of things that trigger it and alternative ways to handle it, both with regard to this person as well as with your wife and other relationships. I think you have a lot going for you, and I think it would be a loss if the depression got so overwhelming so that it colored the way you see things. I think that with the help of therapy, you can not only learn to relate to people in a constructive way. There's nothing wrong with expressing anger. I don't want you to get that wrong. But there are ways to express anger in ways that don't turn off other people. I'd also want to explore with you the nature of the depression, the kinds of thoughts and feelings that surround it, and what triggers it, what results in it sort of getting better. And I think that as you develop these relationships, there may be times down the road when you might get depressed or angry, but that going through therapy will, in some sense, be an irreversible process. That is, while those problems might occur again in the future, you'll be a different person. I want to thank you for enriching my life by having you share your experience. Thank you.